Hey guys, welcome back to the Life with Color podcast. I just wanted to hop on and let you know that this podcast is not only just on YouTube, but it's also on every major podcasting platform as well. So I encourage you to go ahead and like us, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, give us a rating, and also share this podcast on social media because this has an incredible message of hope and recovery from eating disorders. And the more people we can reach, the more that we can help and make an impact. So thank you so much for your support. Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to the Life with Color podcast. I'm your host, Katie Noyd, and today we're doing another episode in the International Recovery Series. Please keep in mind that this series seeks to examine the intersection between eating disorders in different societies while highlighting stories of hope and recovery from individuals around the world. Some of the content in this series may be potentially triggering, so listener discretion is advised. But today I'm joined with Adam Pope. How's it going today, Adam?
Very well. Good morning or good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good morning to you. Yeah, it's really good to see you. And thanks for taking the time to chat with me today about your story and your advocacy work as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive into your biography and give some listeners a little bit of background. So Adam Pope is a mental health advocate and eating disorder survivor in long-term recovery. As a Project Heal ambassador and a NEDA speaker, he's hopeful his recovery journey will inspire others to seek help. Adam lives in Minneapolis with his partner and their new daughter. He is the co-host of a recovery podcast called Eating Disorders Off Topic. So we'll get into his podcast a little bit later, but a little bit of a plug. It's fantastic, so I recommend all of you guys check it out. But let's go ahead and dive into the interview. Now, Adam, can you go ahead and share a little bit about your recovery story and your process with having had an eating disorder in the past?
To begin with, my first time in treatment going through recovery was about 12 years ago in 2008. Mm-hmm. It was just after my dad had passed away and I'd been struggling, having this thing in my life. What do I call it? I'd been losing some weight. I wasn't sleeping well. I was fatigued. I'd been drinking alcohol quite a bit and just kind of struggling to put a name to something that was going on and not knowing what that was. I went in to see the doctor and the doctor was like, maybe we should get you evaluated for some depression, maybe some anxiety. Here's some free samples. What's left? And then he kind of sent me on my way a couple months after that. I just kind of decided I feel like something's not right. So I looked up. I was in college at the time. I just found a nice quiet space. I jumped online and I looked up eating disorder treatment facilities in the area. And I found one. I made a shaky hand phone call, be like, hi, my name is Adam. I think something might be wrong with me. I don't know if I need to see someone. And the person on the other line was super helpful. She was like, all right, let me get your information. Give me your telephone number so we can get back to you. What's your address so we can mail you some information? It was a quick intake survey with a few questions. I sent it back and then they got back to me right away. And were like, hey, we'd like to see you come in and have an in-person evaluation. And that kind of started the ball rolling with my recovery.
Okay.
Which is after sorry.
Yeah. And then before that, do you remember when you first started experiencing eating disorder thoughts and symptoms?
If you would have asked me, maybe during, I would have said maybe a couple months before that, I was pretty heavy. But going through treatment and going through recovery, it helped me identify these behaviors that had been in my life and these emotions that I'd been responding to in my life that went back years before I thought they did. Mm-hmm. So I would say I could maybe identify some stuff in my early teens and teenage years, high school years, that I'm yeah, that was probably the seeds started to grow and the discontent with my body and taking action on it. And then when I got in college, I think that was the time when things just kind of went into overdrive and really got into an unhealthy territory. I mean, they were before, but clinically, I needed something to step in.
Okay, okay. Well, I think it's really cool that you were able to take that step and put on your brave face and then be able to make that call yourself too. I know my mom actually helped me and pushed me into doing that. So having it come from you is huge as well. Can you speak to what your treatment process was like as well?
So I went through treatment 2 times in 2008 and 2010.
Mm-hmm.
2008, I think I was really pushing through it, pushing to get done. They gave me, a pamphlet of material. They gave me a binder to work through. I was doing all the assignments. I was answering all the questions correctly, and I was just going through it. I wanted to get back to my life. I wanted to get back to, back to college, back to, normalcy. And I thought the easiest way to do that would be to just do the homework, get there, do the work, go to my sessions, and get that stuff done without a lot of introspection. And like I mentioned before, like before I went into treatment the first time, my dad had passed away like the month before. So I was still dealing with like a lot of grief, a lot of who am I in this world without that piece in my life. And I just kind of like struggled to really comprehend what was going on with my eating disorder and how deeply it affected me. So I think the first time really taught me that I need to really focus on myself in treatment and not on a lot of like external things. The second time I was in treatment was 2 years later, about the same time of year in the spring. And what I learned from that time was that not to rush it and to spend time with myself in my own emotions and not, I don't know, I think in treatment, it's easy to get caught up with the administration side of it and like what they're taking away from you. And, am I getting a pass this time, or so-and-so is eating so much and I'm eating this much, or, am I doing my laundry in this day or that way, or when is my shower time? And it's easy to get caught up with a lot of that stuff. And what I learned my second time is just to really like bear down and focus on myself and use a lot of that time for introspection. I mean, it changed my life in 2 ways, to be honest.
Yeah.
And first part was the eating disorder that helped me recover, and the second part was meeting people there who had different life experiences than me. I was one of 2 males in the eating disorder treatment. I think our group had 15 to 16 people. And hearing the experiences of these like young women and women of all ages and what they went through, the trauma in their lives, how their lives were different than mine, different like socioeconomic, racial background, and sitting in group therapy and hearing those stories like changed my perspective on how I live my life and like how I interact with other people. And it changed how I vote, how I see the world.
Yeah.
And this just completely like blown my mind. Just like sitting back and listening on those groups not only changed like my eating disorder and helped me that way, but just like getting to know other people so deeply in their experiences really had a profound effect on me.
Yeah, yeah. I know from my own experience too, I really enjoyed hearing other people's backgrounds and stories and kind of their small everyday victories. I think sometimes eating disorders can be such a dark thing to go through as well. But when you see other people who want recovery and who are really fighting for it, and it's the little things each day that kind of, you see them get better and then it's contagious. You also want to get better too. Do you have any specific examples of things that kind of help change your perspective, or any memories from those sessions?
If it was sitting at the table in treatment and recognizing that somebody who was there with you, maybe sitting across the table or down, was struggling with their meal, and it got me thinking about this just holding space for that person and recognizing their struggle, and maybe not saying anything directly to them, and sometimes saying, we know you're struggling, we're just going to sit here and like help you out with it, but not really trying to mention that directly to them. And so it just got me into this notion of like holding space for an individual going through emotional struggles, and then seeing somebody overcome that too, and seeing when they finish the meal and when all that when all that emotional upheaval and that weight is gone, going out into the lounge and something, and them saying, or us saying, like, hey, how'd it go? We saw you really, like, you did a great job with, like, the last, like, with the last portion or that. And then you say, yes, it was great. I appreciate you all there. Like, I felt you helping me out. So I think those things are really important. And a lot of those coping mechanisms, like, I still use today too. I mean, like, that stuff has just never left me. I say to my wife sometimes too, it's whenever someone says, take a deep breath, or if I'm listening to a record and they say deep breath or any like deep breath, I'm just like, I just like instinctively deep breath, take a deep breath. It just helps to kind of alleviate a lot of that.
And from your experience too, and you've touched on this as well, eating disorders affect everyone. They don't discriminate. I think oftentimes people think that they just impact women, but we know that's absolutely not true. They affect everyone from every gender, race, socioeconomic status, every background. I'm wondering if you can touch a little bit on your story with that as well, and your stance.
Yeah, it was interesting. The part I gained from the second round in treatment compared to the first, coming into the first, I was just very shy. Like, what do I tell my teachers? Because I'm taking a break from college. What do I tell my teachers? What do I tell my coworkers, friends? Like, should I let them know about this, embarrassing situation that I have where I don't know how to eat? Compared to, the second time where I was, listen, I need some time off work. I'm struggling with, my mental health, eating disorder, and I'm going to be going to the hospital for a while. And then going to my professors in college and telling them kind of the same thing. I was a lot more open at this time, obviously, and that's not for everyone, which I understand. But what I found from that is that eating disorders impact a lot more people than we think. And the more I told people, hey, I'm going to be going to treatment for a while, my professor came out and he's like, hey, yeah, my daughter went through treatment at that place, 3-4 years ago. And, she's in recovery now and she's doing great. So I wish you the best. And when I was done, I was in a class and they said, what'd you do and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, I'm such and such. I wanted my Adam and I'm just coming out of like a medical leave. I think at that point I was like so excited to tell everyone about eating disorders and get the word out. Like, you would have just said to like say hi to me on the street and I would have been like, let me tell you about eating disorder treatment.
It's fantastic. It's so worth it. You have to go.
Well, it took a while too, and I'm obviously not that exuberant anymore, but a lot of it is, the people that I would meet from it and the people I would connect with, and just people that would say, hey, I've struggled with that too, or it's nice to see someone else talking about it. Because the reality is I don't think maybe we don't use the word enough. We do because, we're obviously like active in the community, but a lot of people just still don't hear about it. And when I tell people that it's something that I've dealt with or that I'm in recovery for, I'll get, they'll look and, oh, okay, like, oh, but you're a guy, and sometimes I just kind of see it in their eyes, just the surprise, and just, men, eating disorders too, at increasingly higher numbers, and it's definitely something we need to be on the lookout, and just talking to more men and young boys definitely about just sharing their feelings and sharing, about that.
Yeah. And in preparation for this interview, I was doing a little bit of research, and it looks like, according to the National Eating Disorder Association, eating disorders will affect up to 10 million males at some point during their lives. And that's about 1 in 3 people struggling with an eating disorder is male. I think, these stereotypes are really hurtful because, they do impact so many people. But I think it's so powerful that you've been able to share your story and open up about it and kind of like squash this taboo, because like you and I both know, not everyone is going around talking about eating disorders. But what's really cool, and what I found from talking about eating disorders on this podcast and from my previous advocacy work, is that the immediate response, you think that people are going to be a little bit like, ooh, oh, what are you talking about? But really the response is interest. The response is curiosity and a willingness to to listen, because it's something that not a lot of people talk about, not a lot of people will open up about. So I think it's so cool that you've been able to do that too. And kind of segueing a little bit to advocacy has been a huge part of your story as well.
Yeah, NEDA has been a huge help keeping my recovery on track and helping me with that, and kind of giving me a voice in recovery. I started helping out with national walks here in Minneapolis, 2012, I want to say, and just kind of going in and being curious. And they said, kind of sit at this table and fill out registration, help with registration stuff. I'm like, okay, I can help with that. And getting to know some of the walk leaders at the time and some of the people who, personally help with the walk has been a blast. And then the time came, they were looking for speakers, and they'd say, hey, would you like to share your story at the Minneapolis walk? Because we, had speakers from the community come in before and share their stories. And I thought, yikes, we had 800, walkers the year before, we had 1,000 walkers. This is bigger audience.
Minneapolis walk is big. It's big.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just like, I don't, seems like a lot of, I think, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it's exciting. So like, I'll agree to it first, and then I'll get used to it when the time comes.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like how I manage my anxiety sometimes too. Like, okay, this is exciting, I'll agree to it. And then I've got time to, figure out the nuts and bolts before it gets there.
Yeah.
No, it was an absolute blast. Like getting to know them and working with the NEDA team, and kind of how they organize the walk has been really neat. And then raising awareness too. It was nice to see, people afterwards coming up and saying, hey, I really appreciate this. And men coming up to me, thank you for talking about this. We appreciate you sharing your story as a guy. And sometimes I forget that's part of it too. How important that is for people to see, a male up there saying something about eating disorders. So it was really helpful in my recovery, because, you always want to be sure where you're at, if it's okay with you, it's not triggering to you to kind of go into that stuff again, and to make sure you feel comfortable telling your own story.
Yeah.
And to me, it was recognizing where the story was at that time. Be like, I know I've been out of recovery for, 5 to 8 years at the time or whatever. And my recovery journey isn't over, but I'm going to tell it up to where it is now, and I'm just going to tell where it's at now. And I think that was important for me too, not just knowing that, people just can hear where I'm at in recovery. And thank NEDA for giving me that platform as well. I think 2018, I moved to do some volunteering with Project Heal.
That's right.
And
can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I moved on to help and volunteer with Project Heal Minneapolis in the Minnesota area, because I like their hyper community focused kind of their mission to help the communities and to do one-on-one mentorship, to do support groups and things like that. So
yeah, definitely. And a big part of Project Heal is also getting people connected with support. Is that correct too? Having access to care, kind of taking down those barriers, like financial barriers or other barriers to getting access.
Yeah.
Can you touch on that, please?
Yeah, that's been a huge part too. From I should say I resigned volunteering with Project Heal back in November when my daughter was born, so I could have some time with her. So what happened? So I'm familiar with what they did, and then, but just I'm not super current with it. But they really wanted to help people access to barriers, so giving scholarships, making sure people have access to treatment, despite how much they get paid, what job they have, where they come from. And I thought that was really important too, because as we continue talking in the eating disorder community, barriers to treatment is super real. We had somebody on my podcast a few months ago, and she was like, I was in and out of psych wards because they wouldn't take me in an eating disorder treatment center. Or if there's not a treatment center around in your area, There's not much for, I mean, where do you go? I mean, a large
Right.
majority of people with eating disorders just don't get treatment because it's not feasible, because they have, they're a single parent with kids and they can't give up that time. Or maybe they're not a single parent. Maybe they're just going through school and they don't want to stop, or that, something's going on. But I mean, a lot of these barriers are, it's tough talking and understanding that people don't, or unable to get help for this. And part of my recovery has been understanding my own privilege that comes from going into treatment and having the finances in a large majority taken care of by my parents. And then I was speaking to a friend the other day, a good guy that, I talked about his eating disorder, and he goes, I'm probably just never going to get treatment for this. And that's the situation a lot of people are in, are just like, I guess I'm never going to get help for this. And so I'm not sure what the solution is. But I guess I just want to make myself available for volunteering and supporting any nonprofit that wants to get into helping these individuals get to treatment. Because thinking of myself, if I didn't get treatment, like, where would I be at? Like, I bought a home, I have a family, like, all these things I feel like were possible because of that. Not only did I make that phone call, but like, financing was available. Like, it was near me. I didn't have to travel. My family didn't have to travel a lot. All of these little things I feel really like came into place to help me, but they're not there for everyone. So recognizing that sometimes just kind of, it's a little bummer, but
Yeah, it's a reality too. I think I also feel privileged that I was able to have access to care as well. And through doing this advocacy work, I have seen that, not everyone has access. And also not just in the US. I feel very thankful for the care I was able to receive and the background I had with that. But, different societies, different cultures, there are certain taboos associated with mental health. And, there are a lot of barriers out there. So I think it's great that there are organizations out there who offer to help people get over these things, because eating disorders, they are so hard. And so, they're deadly. So it's really important that people do have access to care if possible too, even if that's online. So Project Heal is great. NEDA is great. And another thing that I think is really cool that you're doing is you are also a podcast founder and host. Can you speak a little bit about your podcast and what your mission is and what that's about?
Yeah, so my podcast is Eating Disorders Off Topic on Facebook, ED Off Topic. I co-host with a friend, Joy, of mine, who runs the Joy Project here in town. And we met through NEDA and Project Heal and her advocacy in the local community here. Mm-hmm. And we just talked about it from, like, talking online about stuff that's going on in the community, in the eating disorder community, and things that we were both talking about. And we were just like, maybe we should, would other people want to hear us talk about this stuff too?
Yes,
just like, would other people want to hear? And you're just like, so then going through and being like, all right, what eating disorder podcasts are out there? And you're like, well, there's like some clinicians have a podcast, some like parents have a podcast, some people in recovery have a podcast, and they have lots of like dietitians and like professional people on and stuff like that. But we didn't see a ton from like the survivor community, from people in recovery or people who have eating disorders. And we're just like, well, let's make up something like that. Let's talk about, dating when you have an eating disorder. Yeah. Let's talk about, what it's like, being married and still struggling with body image when when you're in recovery. Let's talk about, chronic pain is the next one we're going to talk about having chronic pain and having eating disorder, because we got quite a few friends that have that. But a lot of the subjects are just kind of stuff that, maybe might seem a little taboo professionally, that, again, like, we're not clinicians, we're not experts in the field, we don't have the answers to, but we've been through it. So we know that it's like we know that, people are thinking about it.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I think what's cool about your podcast and from listening to you guys, you have a lot of ideas and you reflect on them, and you always say like, guys, we don't have like the straight answer right now, but it could be this, and we're working through it. And these are things that you're right, that everyone, thinks about. So it's really cool to listen to everyday conversations that really have a substantial impact as well. And if listeners want to, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like you said too, I think the part is like, we don't, at the end of the podcast, sometimes I'll reflect and be like, so what did we accomplish? Like, did we talk about stuff? But I mean, like you said, going back to treatment and going in like group therapy and stuff, sometimes it's just feeling you're not the only one experiencing this. Like for me, having an eating disorder, going through college thinking maybe there's no one else around feeling this, and then going into like a group therapy and eating disorder treatment, just being like,
I'm not
okay.
alone.
I don't know when I'm going to get rid of my eating disorder. I don't know if there's a cure for an eating disorder. Like, I don't know what kind of eating disorder I have, but there's somebody else over there who experiences something similar to what I'm going through. And that's kind of comforting right now. So, I mean, I think if we can offer some of that comfort and get some ideas out there, that's a good idea. So eating disorders off topic on Facebook, edofftopic@gmail.com if you want to. We're available on every podcast app and stuff like that. So, Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, Google, everything like that. You can find us on there. So,
yeah, definitely check them out, you guys, because there's a lot of great topics and unique topics as well that are covered. So I definitely recommend, giving it a listen as well. And something that you've mentioned on your podcast is kind of the genetics of eating disorders too. And you, of course, have a new daughter. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
And you,
I'm in her
absolutely.
room.
You're in her room. It's so sweet. It's so sweet. Can you share a little bit about what parenting is going to be like too as she gets older, and what you want to teach her in the future, and coping mechanisms, all that kind of stuff?
I'm scared.
Yeah.
I was scared to have a daughter. Scared to have a child with my wife. Because of my history of depression and anxiety, eating disorder, alcoholism is in my family. You're just like, what am I doing? Like, what am I sentencing this person to? But I mean, it was like pretty dark for a while. Then I'm like, okay, like think through this. What's going on? That's genetics aren't everything too, right? So like you can, try and like overcome those things. But so yeah, we had a daughter. And I'm just like, okay, we can do this. You know what? Everyone else, a lot of people do this. We can do this. And then let's try and raise her the best we can with the most support and the most encouraging ways, and try and do what we can. It was scary. I didn't think my eating disorder would come into play as many ways as it has, having a child. Specifically, there was a moment where she was young and she was just trying out food, maybe at like 3 months or something like that. And I remember her sitting at the table, and I'm like trying to like feed her food, and she's like taking a bite and she's crying a little bit. And then she's like, I don't want that. And then she like had another bite, and then she started crying. And then like, I was just getting like super emotional about having flashbacks in treatment about me eating food at a glass table while like I was crying and eating like tiny bits of food. And I'm like, this is really tough for me.
Wow.
And it was like tough. I'm like, it was just like, there was so much like in that moment. And I'm just like, Genevieve, my daughter, I'm like, Genevieve, like, you're okay with this food? I don't want to feel like I'm forcing you, or like you're having like a tough time with this food, and I want you to have a good relationship with this food. I hope you're not crying.
Yeah.
And my wife came in, she's like, so how did feeding go? And I'm just like, oh.
So much. Like, it was so much.
Yeah, like I was like, we made it through. And it's a part of it is just reminding myself that I've got like 36 years of like baggage. And she's just a little baby. Like she doesn't have anything.
Yeah.
She's responding to the texture of the food, the temperature of the food, the taste of the food. Like she's experiencing all these new things. And like sometimes things are going to be a little weird for her, and she's going to be like, no, that's not for me.
Not for me.
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah, and she'll get used to things too. So like the next time we had that food, like it went down just fine. So yeah, that was one of those things that just like came out of the blue. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be awesome. Like I'm gonna cut up some food for you. It's gonna be fun. And then it just like devolved into this like, oh, I hope I'm not like hurting you like emotionally. I'm really sorry about this. And I'm like, Genevieve, like, can you try a little more? And so I talked to my wife about it, and I talked to another friend with an eating disorder who has kids, and we just kind of like talked everything through. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
all right, she's fine. Like, we're good, we're fine. It was just kind of, it was all I was bringing into the situation, and I've just had to check myself on that quite a few times, and just being like, all right, what baggage am I bringing in? My daughter's just trying to have a meal, so it's been surprising. But it's been, again, like it's been helpful to have those friends and family, and to have people without eating disorders who are parents be like, is this normal?
Yeah, yeah,
Like, yeah, I felt
definitely.
that way too. My mom being like, yeah, I felt that way too sometimes when I was feeding you, or friends being like, yeah, I don't have an eating disorder, but sometimes it was tough having my daughter try new foods because she tries a little bit at the beginning, or just kind of unusual. So
Yeah, yeah.
things like that just pop up and kind of throw me a little bit sometimes. But
Yeah. Well, it's a new step in your recovery too, your long-term recovery. It's always coming in a new form. So to be able to recognize that and kind of get rid of that too is really important as well, and good to work through too. I
yeah,
saw that with genetics, the Mayo Clinic showed that 50 to 70% of eating disorders can be genetic, and then 30 to 50% is environmental. So if there is a little bit of genetics, whether that be with the eating disorder or like one's like anxiety, depression, that kind of thing too, environment has a huge role in that too.
yeah,
Have you thought about, as she grows up, what kind of like coping skills, whether it's the grounding, the deep breathing that you're talking about, or
yeah.
mindfulness, or yeah.
And I think a lot of information we're getting now is just like diet behavior, and making sure that she sees parents who are comfortable with themselves, or don't do a lot of diet talk, or don't, you know, when I was little, like finishing my plate was a big deal. Like, oh, if I'm kind of full, like, oh, be sure to finish your plate. So just like making sure that she understands her hunger cues, and kind of respect those, and respect her autonomy that way, and saying, all right, if you're hungry, you're good, you know. And then, I mean, as far as like friends and stuff, like I don't know, like, uh, but I just hope as a parent that I can be a good example. And part of that is being honest about my own mental health struggles, and being honest with her about what I've been through and what I've learned. Um, I don't know when a time's going to come to share that. I guess I'll be able to share that with my daughter, and hopefully that'll give her, some insight about, the person I am, and maybe, guide her in a way. So, I mean, I wish that's something that my parents would have shared with me more, but I mean, maybe it's kind of a different generational thing too.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. I was a dance teacher. I last summer I was in Denmark after being in Dubai for a little bit. Then I had like about a 5-month period in the U.S. And during that time, I was a dance teacher. And the girls who I was working with, they were actually learning mindfulness. And that was something I had never heard about until I was in treatment. I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like, how have I never heard about this before? But it is cool to see that these coping skills, these ways to de-stress and to kind of come down from anxiety and to really be
yeah,
present in the world is being taught at a younger age, and there's more awareness about it too. So
yeah, who'd have
yeah,
thought? Like, it's just kind of like a normal thing, and not in like a treatment atmosphere. They're just saying,
yeah,
hey, kids, this is something that's helpful.
yeah,
Whether
please.
that's because they're experiencing more anxiety, or they just want to be more, just kind of like relax the kids a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's incredible. That
I
just
thought so too. Yeah,
So I think a lot
definitely.
of, when my daughter grows up too, I will owe a lot to eating disorder advocacy organizations that have been trying to get schools to do away with like weight in gym class, or make mindfulness maybe part of the curriculum, or when they do like health and diet class, make sure that is in line with not triggering eating disorders. And I know NEDA and BETA try and do a lot of work with educational organizations to try and implement some of those things. So I'm hopeful that she'll get good information, and yeah.
I hope it continues to get better each generation, and day by day it gets better too. So thank you for opening up a little bit about your family and your background as well. Kind of wrapping things up a little bit, I have a couple questions that I ask everyone in the recovery series. The first is, has there been anything that has been particularly challenging in your recovery?
Challenging has been, say, actually, like exercise and body image have been difficult. I know I've spoken about exercise a couple times because it's one of those difficult things that how well you're doing is only inside your head. And you know, if I'm going for a bike ride to work, I want to make sure I'm doing it for the right reasons. You know, not to lose weight, not to you know, for any like ED behavioral reason. And that can switch so quick sometimes. Even like if I'm riding a bike, to look down and look at like a skin fold, to be like, oh, okay, maybe a couple more miles and like I can get rid of that skin fold, and then just like snap back to myself and be like, nope, it's a nice breezy day.
Yeah.
The air is beautiful. I'm listening to good music. Like I can hear the birds chirping, and just like, okay, got to get rid of that. So like, and it's like it's all in your head too. You know, like a lot of that work has to be done within yourself. And sometimes, you know, biking will be, you know, 10 miles will be awesome, or, you know, a few miles or whatever. And then one will just be like kind of a struggle with body image. And then sometimes body image won't come to mind at all when I'm cycling or rowing or something like that. And it'll just be enjoyable, like trying to keep my heart good, trying to keep my body fit so I can live longer with my daughter. And a lot of this because, I mean, my dad died when he was 51. Like his dad died when he was, you know, in his late 60s. So just trying to make sure, you know, I live as long as I can for my daughter, and, you know, be a good example for her. But I guess that's one thing that I still struggle with. It's still been a struggle, is body image just seems to be kind of something that just lingers, you know. And if it's one of those weeks where I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to avoid mirrors today, or stepping out of the shower and being like, all right, just ignore that for now, put on clothes and have fun, you know?
Yeah.
And next day it might feel better. So.
Yeah. I think you've touched on something really important too. There are different stages in recovery, and also just, I guess, in life too. I don't know them specifically, but it's like, okay, first is weight restoration, then it's maybe treatment and working on what's going on, you know, targeting these thoughts and getting rid of them. I think I was told in my treatment process that body image is the last thing to go, and something that people, not just who have had an experience with eating or having had a history of an eating disorder, but something that a lot of people struggle with too. So I think it's cool that you have the tools and the ability to recognize it, and then you like snap out of it and say, okay, actually no, the breeze feels really good today, and this is, I want to live with my daughter and take care of her and all this. So a really cool attitude shift.
What you said kind of reminds me of what, you know, there's just this normal level of dissatisfaction. I remember talking to my therapist about that once, be like, when am I gonna get back to normal? When am I just gonna be happy with my body? And she's like, we're going to shoot for just like a general normal quote, like level of like at the normal dissatisfaction. Like that's going to happen. Like, that's okay. Some people are happy with their bodies all the time, but like some people just have little struggles. So like, we're not going to go for perfect. We're just going to kind of get you at a manageable level. So where there's not a lot of like behaviors, you're not binging and purging, a lot of those things. I'm like, okay, that seems doable, you know?
Yeah.
Because like you said, like even somebody without an eating disorder, you know, even without an eating disorder, there's, you know, you can just have a general level of dissatisfaction sometimes, you know, and other times you walk by the mirror and you're like, yes,
Yeah.
Let's go on a date tonight.
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
feeling
I
good.
look good today. Yeah,
Yeah, let's get
100%.
dressed up and go. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so true. I think you've also touched on something too about like perfectionism, and it's something that in recovery, you're not shooting for perfection at all. You're just shooting for like just being you and just kind of being in tune with who you are as well and what you need in that moment is so big. So kind of rejecting that need to be perfect and all of that is so huge. Yeah. Another question I have for you is, what has been helpful in your recovery?
Telling my story. Telling my story has been huge. And listening to other people and how they've gone through treatment, hearing other people's stories and what's worked for them. I think getting out there, and I mean, I remember a moment with my wife maybe like 8 years ago or something when I decided to do more with NEDA. And I said, hey, like, is this, some people just like to get through it and forget about it. I'm like, is this like, are you comfortable if I make this like eating disorder advocacy a part of my life? Because it's been something I'm thinking about doing, just always having it in a part of my life, whether it's speaking or doing a podcast or, like community speaking. And she's like, yeah, I think like I'm okay with it. And so it's kind of something that I've always been doing now. And I think it's been really helpful to me to get the feedback from people too, to say this has been helpful for us. So part of my journey has just been making sure that other people get the early intervention, or that they know what's going on with them, or like we said, they feel less alone because they've heard the story from someone else and they said, oh, that guy's going through it too. Okay, that makes me feel less alone. Also, just going to therapy has been helpful. Going to therapy, taking my medication, just simple stuff, At a time, I just had to be like, my brain's not making enough of this, so I guess I got to take store-bought. We'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's fun,
And do what you can to take care.
Yeah. Try, to keep exercise to release some endorphins, like go outside, go on walks for my daughter, stuff like that. But sometimes if you're just like, can't get enough, then you need to take your medicine daily, see your therapist every once a month or so. And then having that support system too, friends, family, have been really helpful.
Yeah. That's good. Well, I'm glad that you're doing well in your own recovery and that you're comfortable sharing your story, because it's so important to be able to see everyone represented, everyone's voice represented. I think the more people know and hear about eating disorders, the more easy it is for people to go and get that help. So I think, thank you for the work that you're doing. One final question I have is, do you have any advice for anyone who is currently struggling in Minnesota, in the US, around the world even? What would you say?
I would say tell someone and talk to someone. I had a good friend that I talked to at the time, David, and I was just like, is this normal? Like, are you unsatisfied with your body like this? Like, are you trying to? And he just was just like that, like first ear that listened to me, and just ultimately, I think eating disorders kind of thrive in this like isolation and seclusion.
Absolutely.
And just like feeling it's your own thing and nobody else will understand, and it's just like you and the eating disorder against the world, like just but I mean, as soon as you let a little bit of light in, then like more is going to come in. So as soon as you tell somebody maybe like, oh, I have trouble eating, phrase it however you want. You don't have to announce to the world like you have an eating disorder. But, even if it's like a little bit that you get comfortable sharing, try and follow those positive feelings. If you get a little bit of positive feeling from sharing with someone, try and do it again. And then if you want to be anonymous, like NEDA has a text line or a call line, and you can just call and be like, hey, this is what's going on with me. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm struggling with. And they'll listen to you and kind of guide you through it and give you as much support as you want. I understand that, like, treatment's super scary. I remember, like, it was, it was scary for me, because, you don't know if they're just going to, like, throw you away or something like that, but it's
What did they do to you in there?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I've never been in there before. Like, it's in that hospital building over there. That's where they do it. I never see. And I mean, it's just people that want to help you out and make it, as comfortable and, as easy as possible for you. I mean, there's people that will, take your hand and kind of help you along the way. Yeah, try and share with others, I guess, would be my main thing. Find a friend or a loved one, or, if you like connecting with strangers, if, I don't know, like, if you're in a chat group or something like that, sometimes you just, like, tell people stuff that you feel more comfortable with that. So, start somewhere and share what you're going through, because somebody else is going through something too.
Absolutely. And it also kind of takes the power away from it too. When you open up, you like you were saying, you kind of let that light in, and it helps you feel not as ashamed of yourself, because this isn't something to be ashamed of at all. So yeah, hearing other people's stories and also being able to open up and share yours too, it helps so much. And I've had that same exact experience too. So yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, Adam, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for sharing your story, your background, and your advice as well. For our listeners, if you guys want to check out Adam, go ahead and go to Eating Disorders Off Topic. Can they find you anywhere else?
Nope, that's it.
That's Facebook. Okay, Facebook, Eating Disorders Off Topic.
Yeah, on Facebook, Eating Disorders Off Topic. I don't think we have the Twitter yet, so yeah, I think we're just on Facebook, and then email us if you have questions about Eating Disorders Off Topic or anything like that. So
yeah, well, go check them out, and thank you so much again for your time today. It was so good to hear your story and your background. So thank you so much.
Sounds good. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah. All right. Take care. Bye.